apparently these conservatives on Twitter, I don't know. I'm surprised at their reaction. They could have ignored this.
They can't.
But apparently they don't feel they can. Now, who's this cat turd guy? Wasn't he like Elon Musk's friend and then he got rejected or something like that? What happened?
He's a major conservative, crap posting account, right, Matt, you would say?
Yeah, he's big. Occasionally he has issues with Trump, but he's, just a sad
like
Trumper.
An Ian Miles Chong type.
Yeah.
So they saw this guy that you were debating, and because...
This is the picture of the guy who was telling me that folks get tax cuts if they hire black people. That's what DEI is. Mm-hmm. And that's not what DEI is. Folks don't get tax cuts if they hire black people. Did we go through this the other day with the, we did during the promo. There is a program where you will get tax cuts if you hire, this is the work opportunity tax cut. And you scroll down and you do get a tax cut if you hire qualified citizens. So who are they? Scroll down. I think it's all the way down at the bottom. Targeted groups. It can be a qualified IVA. Hit that. Qualified is an individual as a member of a family receiving assistance under a state program. So in other words, you remember all the work qualification programs? Like you can't qualify. No, keep that up here. Keep that up here. You can't qualify for Medicaid unless you get a job that all the Republicans want to do. Well, this encourages that.
For, people in lower income.
People who are getting family assistance under a state program, the way you get them out of it is by getting them into a job, according to the Republicans. So that's what they do. Or if you're a qualified veteran. This is the thing that he was complaining about. Or if you're a qualified ex-felon, right? Because you want people to be able to work and you want to encourage ex-felons to get back into society and rehabilitate. Or a designated community resident. Click that. You got to be 18-year-old and under 40 and have a principal residence within an empowerment zone or rural renewal county. And what does this do? It encourages businesses to go to rural areas or encourages businesses to go to struggling areas within a city or in a suburb. Set up the business there and it makes it essentially a subsidy for the business. A vocational rehabilitation referral. Click on that. That is, if you have a physical or mental disability, and you're still working on working on that and rehabilitating, and you can get a job. Qualified summer youth programs, qualified SNAP benefits recipients, qualified security income, that's SSI. Income recipients, long-term family assistance, qualified long-term unemployment recipient. Now, there may be black people who are there. Maybe you have a black guy, he's served in the military, he's a vet, but that's it. And then the guy was telling me that not only do they get that in the private sector, and we just saw the only program which provides those tax cuts, they also get this in the public sector. And I said, what are you talking about? Agencies don't get tax cuts because they don't pay any taxes, because they are the government. The government doesn't pay taxes to itself.
Yeah, pretty rudimentary that government agencies are funded by the government.
Kind of a weird category to make in any circumstance.
And he was adamant that I was wrong in his argument as to why DEIA should be cut.
Should we play that clip?
Yeah, let's play that clip.
It's kind of short.
Yep, here it is.
This was maybe the stupidest moment.
Now, in terms of a DEI initiative, the reason why there's military bans on trans women and trans men is because they do not have the ability to cooperate at a mental capacity when they're constantly undergoing hormone treatment, as well as depression pills, as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to
aside
combat,
from the theory that all trans people are heavily medicated at any time, I don't think if you are heavily medicated and your medication is preventing you from performing your duties, I also don't think that they're going to be putting you on the front lines in the military.
No.
Because that would be a problem for everybody. I mean, it's not like trans people are the only people who are depressed at times or taking medication.
There's a trans man in the military that was profiled by the New York Times, and he said that his only gender-affirming treatment is one testosterone shot a week. Now, the Republicans are adamantly against testosterone shots. I mean, just ask RFK Jr., whose physical appearance in his 70s looks quite... He's 70, right?
It
looks a little different.
100%.
So, I mean, they must be really against testosterone shots if that's the case.
Continue on with this.
pills as well as different mood stabilizer pills. And so when you go out to combat, do you really think you're going to bring an ice cooler pack with your, whether that be hormone estrogen or whatever it may be, while you're about to shoot someone of the opposing war?
Well, the executive orders that Trump gave were DEIA orders that had to do with agencies that have nothing to do with the military.
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do.
The FDA, they just revoked the ability of the Air Force to teach Air Force members about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Well,
what are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
Honestly,
all right, pause it for 1 second. Now, to be fair, this was shot in January, and within a couple of days they had reversed it. But we also know since then they have removed something like 40,000 images because they contained women or black people or Native Americans through like military documents and I guess websites and whatnot. It's just bizarre. But go ahead.
well, we're not.
What are we talking about here?
Okay, well,
Honestly, like they're rewriting history.
well, that's your perspective, right? But at the end of the day, if a person
Tuskegee Airmen, we can all agree, existed, right?
Just listen to this. If you were racist, right, and you were an employer, and if you wanted to absolutely be racist and exercise that, you would. I think DEI sort of prevents people from seeing the reality. If a person truly wanted to hire you based on your intellect, based on your skill set, they would. DEI essentially provides tax cuts for the end of the year when you
Pause it
create your
now.
tax
Like, I mean,
returns.
I've never been so gish galloped by nonsense. Like I don't like
At the end of the day, Sam.
Like I couldn't even follow what he was saying that DEI prevents people from seeing how racist people are, and it doesn't allow their discrimination to come out in the open. And understand, DEI doesn't do anything in terms of the hiring thing except it allows for putting public notice in a bunch of different communities. Low-income communities. It also, I think, encourages summer internships, low-income communities, but also other places. All DEI does, to the extent that it's involved in the hiring process, is to expand the pool of people who are considered, not to give extra points to anybody. That's the whole point. And then, for those people who are already hired, to make sure that there's nothing that's happening within the workplace that is discriminatory. So and that's why it's DEIA. Make sure that things are accessible. Go ahead.
Essentially provides tax cuts for the end of the year when you create your tax returns. They give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is black or a person of color. I don't know if you knew that.
In these agencies?
In agencies and private
In government
businesses.
agencies, they don't get tax cuts for hiring people
And
of
the other
color.
thing I
This
wanted
is
to, and
protect
the other
people
thing I
from
want to
discrimination.
the other thing I want to kind of state here is that I've realized that a lot of the times with the liberals is that you guys push for example, for DEI and people of Latino or Hispanic descent. And a lot of the times what you don't realize is you're actually doing more harm than good by putting them in positions where you you make them believe that it's based on the color of their skin. It's based on
DEIA is not
it's based on merit. DEI emphasizes color, skin color, physical
it
attributes.
says that the people who work in your agency, it's about anti-discrimination.
Discrimination against what?
Against people who may have different cultural mores, may have different.
But that's irrelevant to a job, right? It should be based on merit, and that is the emphasis
people
here.
get hired as a merit, but if the DEI,
if you get a tax
if the DEIA, I'm talking about Trump's rescission of
If
these
you
orders
received a
on
tax
these
cut as
agencies.
an employer, wouldn't you hire a person of color?
Dude,
If you could pay them less?
listen, we're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. They don't. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
Yes,
these
they
are.
do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about.
Do you understand? Like, there's such a cascade of complete nonsense that it was sort of hard for me to catch up and like address. Like, how do you have a conversation with someone who thinks government agencies? How do you have a policy conversation with somebody who thinks government agencies pay taxes?
The FDA is busy doing their taxes because it's coming up now.
I mean, Sam, the grass is blue. Grass is blue.
The IRS.
Yes,
that's the
it
thing.
is.
You've really got to monitor when the IRS does their taxes. You've really got to monitor it because they know how to get around all of the rules.
I think, I almost feel for him because I feel like he's almost putting on this smug persona
It's an audition.
in a way to really obscure the fact that he has no idea what he's talking about.
But the thing is, he volunteered to go jump and sit in that seat. Like, I don't like. It's just the level of assuredness and the absolute level of wrongness. And so I was completely flummoxed at this point. Like, I didn't know how to communicate any further. But this is what I did.
No,
Yes, they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
Every
parts of-
private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true. And you know what? I think the whole juxtapose of this entire
What
conversation.
month is this?
This is January.
Okay, so we can agree on that. The FDA does not pay taxes. It does not get a tax cut because it doesn't pay taxes. DEIA forces them as an agency to say if you have a job opening, you must do your best efforts to make sure that every
I like that. I
part
love
of
me a
society.
buzzword. You must do your best effort.
can
I
you
love
pause
that
it?
buzzword.
Like, how do you respond to that? Must.
Must.
is not a buzzword.
Must. It's a buzzword, apparently.
It's more like legalese.
I just, it almost like honestly, I have to say, it was a brilliant strategy because I am so confused as to like what is going on here.
What? That's a very nice buzzword there. Why are you hiding behind words that connect other words here?
I don't know if there's any more to play there. I guess, I mean, people can watch this.
People
whole
can
thing.
watch it.
But the funny part about this is on Twitter, somebody saw some clip of it. This guy, Carly Bonet.
He said yeesh. So it's clearly, I think it's about like how much you embarrass this person. And they say yeesh, but it's not specific about who is who and who's the liberal.
I don't
and
know
who's the conservative.
who anything about Carly Bonet. I suspect that they must be a conservative because blue check, flag, and cat turd must follow them, right?
Right.
And so he sees this and just assumes that this guy is the liberal and writes, cat turd does, liberals are so dumb. And then people in the comments just start jumping on that bandwagon without looking at it.
Tisha Ramirez says that look you get when you know you have to debate a brainless, witless social justice warrior clown whose IQ is mid-50s.
Okay, and
They're making you into a
taking
conservative
me a
meme.
picture, and they took a picture of me and say like, they think I'm the conservative in this. They have not. It's fascinating.
The person responds, he's the progressive, actually. The guy who you're calling the clown is the conservative. Whoops. And then this person responds, really? He sounded like the adult in the room, LOL. Perhaps it could be a good opportunity for you to think about that a little bit more. Maybe you want to think about it a little bit more when you saw this clip, how Sam spoke authoritatively about things that he knows about, and this guy spewed a bunch of BS, and it's pretty obvious to anybody, right?
I just don't understand. Like, did people not listen to the thing, or
No.
or what?
They looked at you without the audio playing and said, look at that man.
Look at that man who is a cis older white man. Look at this younger person who
with
I don't
a fancy
know.
haircut.
I don't know what his sexuality is, but
Bigotry does not exist.
Yes.
Guys.
Yeah.
Okay? It's all based on merit.
and so they just saw the identities of the people in the video and said, and also saw that you succeeded in beating up on that person rhetorically, and they thought it was you. So pretty incredible.
So that happened. Let's do we have the other one where the religious fundamental one.
This is the one that is being recirculated as the own on conservative media, which is also not true. But I do think it's something interesting to pay attention to with the reaction to which has gone viral, which is extremely exciting because you did such a great job. But like the fact that they saw the way that left-wing spaces responded to this debate and how much you humiliated these people that don't have basic knowledge, and they feel like they need to counteract that. So both Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk tweeted about you. Matt Walsh tweeted about me last week too.
Right. And I think Knowles too.
Yeah, and they were like, oh, Sam Seder owned, and they used this clip as the example. I disagree, but it's the same thing with the cat turd thing. It doesn't. They didn't even. Most of them aren't even watching the video.
They want their people to go to the comments, and because the comments are massively in favor of Sam, they're trying to brigade it.
They're trying, and this happened with me with Tim Pool too, where the post-millennial and Elon Musk got on board when I thought I did a pretty good job in that debate. And then you, like 12 hours later, have all the conservative accounts at the same time saying Emma owned or now Sam owned, because they always think that they are so terrified of not being cool or being sidelined in the culture. So they flood the zone with a bunch of propaganda as a way to combat it.
It's cope.
Well, there's a lot of cope around this, but I will say that I don't think I handled this guy as well as I could have. Now, with that said, the prompt was, unless you are a billionaire or a xenophobic nationalist or a religious fundamentalist, voting for Trump was a mistake. And I wanted to phrase it like that because I wanted to explain to these folks why Trump's policies favor only billionaires in terms of relative millionaires and whatnot, but certainly billionaires, and why they only favor a certain amount of xenophobic nationalism, or it is great for Christian fundamentalists. I probably should have said theocrats. Right? And my assumption was that I was going to be in a position to explain that these elements are part and parcel of the Trump administration. I did not anticipate that multiple people would come up. There was no billionaires there, but there was, it turns out, a xenophobic nationalist who came up and was like, why is that a bad thing?
Who works for Elijah Schaefer and
the guy fired by Glenn Beck for sexual assault accusations.
And I didn't go into it. I mean, on some level, it's a choice. Like, you can hate immigrants. Like xenophobia means something. It's not a made up word. Although I think that woman actually said it's a made up word. All words are made up, incidentally. But they have a meaning. It's in the dictionary. And for me, it is, it's obvious. It's self-evident that that's a bad thing. And really, on some level, my bet is, in that instance, that the majority, maybe not the vast majority of people, maybe not the people sitting around me, but certainly the majority of people who are going to see this are going to say, hey, wait a second. I'm not a xenophobic nationalist.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing this already with immigrants who are like, well, I thought they were only going to take the criminals. And so that was my theory there. It was also my theory with approaching the question of theocrats. On some level, it is so self-evident to me that you don't want to live in a religious theocracy that it took me a while to realize, like, oh, with this guy, he is promoting a religious theocracy. And I didn't really do a good a job as I could have, I think, in refuting it. But we're not refuting that it's a religious theocracy, but that why it's bad to live in a religious theocracy.
Because 10 years ago, this would have been self-evident, but we're in a very reactionary right-wing time. And I do think that they are also overreaching here by thinking that this plays beyond their little circle jerk.
That's the thing, is that I don't think I did as good a job as I could have, but I still...
You're being too
I didn't
hard on
have
yourself.
to, because that guy made the case for me.
Yeah.
But here is this exchange.
Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't.
But morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really...
Okay, pause it there. Now, they couldn't have known this, I don't think.
That guy could be a Tim Pool fan.
It's possible, but this, of course, was the whole gotcha that Tim Pool had. And what I should have said in this moment is, I'm like Thanos.
But you did laugh because
I did laugh. No,
it
it totally occurred to me that this was like about Tim Pool, but nobody else was going to get that. But here's the thing. Here's what he's saying to me. And I don't think I really understood what he was getting at until much later in this conversation. But what he's getting at is he's arguing that his version of religious fundamentalism is the most sound version of how you should have, provides for him the most sound vision of how life should be and how people should be organized. And he's trying to make the point when he says, like, you have no morality, it's just preference. Ultimately, it is a preference. I mean, one's vision of the world is a preference. I like my vision, he likes his vision. His argument is that his vision is better than mine because it has a foundation in a moral code developed by God. And that mine is just flimsy because it's not developed by God or whatever version of God that I have. Just continue. Just keep that in mind. That's what he's trying to get at. But let him speak, because it takes me a while to sort of like realize, oh, this is, okay, I see what you're saying. You're telling me that your version of religious fundamentalism, because this guy could have been a fundamentalist Muslim, he could have been a fundamentalist Jew who would have a different sense of how we should live our lives. He could have been a Hindu. He could have been a Buddhist. Now, some of these religions don't impose in the same way that this guy wants to do. But just understand, like, I could have gotten to this much quicker if I had understood sort of where he was headed, and I would have conceded, yes, it's a preference. We have different preferences. I continue.
With being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society.
Okay.
We have laws that we have decided as a society in a
Yes.
democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
They would be morally right under your
not
view.
morally right. No. I'm not
Okay.
talking about morals.
Okay, so here's where I'm
Here's the
getting to,
thing,
right?
is that this guy wants to organize civil society under a set of morals. Now, he wants them to be his morals. And from my perspective, you organize civil society under a sense of justice. And on some level, egalitarianism. And that's where we start to have this difference. But he wants me to live in his frame, and I'm not quite fully understanding what he's trying to argue here. But yes, it is a set of preferences, and now he moves on to try and say his preferences are better. And he's trying to give me these hypotheticals as to, what is the basis of you being against, everybody arguing that trans people should not exist?
Can I say this is fundamentally anti-American? You don't need a God to believe your morality has any kind of foundation. But you know what doesn't have a foundation in this country is theocracy. All the founding fathers were theists.
I think that's self-evidently true. They had the opportunity to set it up as a theocracy, and they didn't do it.
No, we have separation of church and state.
They wrote against it.
In fact, they were rejecting a king. And in societies that have a king, they are the number 2 person in the universe with power. Number 1 is God, who delegates to the king, who then delegates out. Understand that like feudalism and monarchy, those are all religious constructs.
And
they are all religious constructs. And so fundamentally, theocracy is contrary to American life. But that's not the argument that he wants to make. He's trying to make an argument that religious fundamentalism, his version, incidentally, religious Christianity, and not just religious Christianity, but fundamental Christianity as he understands it, is the best system on its merits. And I don't fully realize he's trying to make this argument yet. All right, but continue.
Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off
I
of.
believe you can have an ethical framework without
and if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so 2 men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation.
Okay, pause it right there. So now all of a sudden he's the utilitarian. He's the consequentialist, right? If you take leftist views here and you don't follow God's prescripts, again, as he understands it, then we have low birth rates.
Yep.
Okay. As a utilitarian, this guy should know, like, well, all right, maybe in theory, but that's not a danger. The reason why we have low birth rates is not because of gay marriage. In fact, as gay marriage has progressed, we've seen higher birth rates amongst those people.
I mean, he just made that case about surrogacy.
Exactly.
I'll just say the highest birth rate, if we're going by religions, is Muslims. So maybe they have a secret.
Okay.
They don't like
I mean,
that part.
honestly, that's the thing. Is he switches to a utilitarian perspective because he wants to argue that his Christian fundamentalism is the best way to organize society. And it's a theocracy. And you can say reject theocracy based upon it not being American in that sense. But ultimately, it is a preference. He's decided to organize society around stuff that he has interpreted, or he's been told how to interpret, in a book that was written a long time ago. Religion certainly, I was raised Jewish. Religion certainly informs parts of my worldview, without a doubt. I don't know if I could disaggregate it and say which one it does, but certainly aspects of it do. My Jewish schooling definitely does. I happen to have been exposed to the Holocaust more than your average person who's not Jewish as a kid. That informed my thinking. There are a lot of things that inform my thinking. It is not, and I don't even have to make the argument that I think it's better if you're not constrained by a book written by somebody who was aspiring to power 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago. I don't even have to make that argument because we can just do it on its merits. We can just say, my preferences are that women are not subjugated and are not second-class citizens. My preferences are that people have the right to express themselves in their sexuality. My preferences are that people are treated the same regardless of whether they're gay or straight in terms of marriage. My preferences are that if you are a member of civil society, you follow those laws. So if abortion is legal, if contraception is legal, you don't get an out if you want to be a pharmacist and not provide that.
But they feel threatened, and goes back to, as long as I've paid attention to politics, religious fundamentalism feels threatened by a more like collectivist worldview that is about making everybody's lives better, because that is something that contradicts their hierarchical view of society, right? So when they talk about morality, they don't mean morality, because it's not moral to drive trans kids to suicide, or to say gay people can't live the lives that they want to live, or to say that, as this guy will later say, women should be subjugated, and we'll get to that later. Though there's no morality there because of the pain that it inflicts upon people. So they have to prescribe an artificial morality, which in reality is just control, domination, a set of rules and prescriptions that make them feel like they can make sense of the world because of who they are subjugating and dominating. And what you're talking about threatens that, because it's not connected to a hierarchy or to this set of rules. It's connected to humanism.
And I don't even have to argue. I think you can. One is more moral than others. I'm just arguing that as a vision for America, I am willing to put my vision for America, where women have the same rights as men, where black people have the same rights as white people. Let's not make any mistakes here. Anti-miscegenation laws were justified on religious grounds. When the religious right started to get active in politics in this country, it was because they were not getting tax cuts, or they were not getting tax. They were subjects to tax if they didn't follow U.S. civil rights. And so things like Bob Jones University. That's when they started getting in there and talking about abortion. It wasn't exclusively the reason, but that was a big problem for them. Slavery, also justified on religious grounds. Not just slavery. The taking of native property in this country, or native land, and killing them, was based upon a papal edict. Mm-hmm. Religion has allowed for domination throughout. And, people can argue whether it's moral or not moral. I would suggest it is, but I don't even need to argue that. I can just argue, what is a vision of this country? Keep playing with this, dude.
Do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society is
should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults...
So now he's saying, his argument is, and he wants to create this as this is some type of logic problem, right? Pedophiles are acting on their urges Gay people are acting on their innate urges. Therefore, they're the same. The implications of these two things in his mind are the same. And if we can tell pedophiles, hey, don't victimize children,
Who can't consent.
subsume that urge, then we could say that's a gay people. And so now he's saying it's about consent, right? So that's what I say. I say it's about consent. And here is his argument after that. And his whole point is like, you, Sam, have no, you just look at it case by case and assess
Right.
what is right and what is wrong. And he can't do that. He has a set of rigid laws that are prescribed to him by somebody in the sky via, his pastor, whomever it is that has told him.
Saying, don't be gay,
And don't be gay.
Good impression.
even if
Scott.
you think it feels good.
But the funny thing is that it goes from morals and some type of logical consistency to then consequentialism, right? Because you could say the same thing about heterosexuals, right? Like it's an urge. Why can't we curb that? Why can't we say one child per household? You cannot, or why can't we say you can only fornicate for children? It's an urge. You can subsume it. Well, he would say, it is the outcomes of that. We need more children. We don't want low birth rates. Okay, you can only have sex if it's to consummate, to actually have a child. And this is where they would go, because that's why they say we can control contraception.
But he's conflating pedophilia and homosexuality. I just want to make this clear. Even though there is not a victim in the case of consensual homosexual relationships.
Watch where he goes with his consent stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so you're okay with the 45-year-old dad with the 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest.
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's like it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't about
Well, but
freedom
also
and
I can-
exercising what you want.
I mean,
All right, pause it. So first off,
your
in his world, life is not about freedom and exercising what you want. Now, he keeps switching between the consequentialism of you can't have gay marriage because it doesn't produce babies, and then he goes back to it's just these rigid laws. Life is not about what you want. It is about laws that have been set down literally from stone, from God, and it's not about consent. It's about society making choices here. But this is why, based upon what he's saying, the next step in saying you cannot have contraception is where they lead to. Because again, it's not about having fun. It's not about choices. And just like we tell pedophiles to curb their urges, we can tell gay people to curb their urges, and then we can tell straight people, curb your urges. Sex is only to procreate. And that's their standing.
Well, not straight people. Half of straight people.
Well, they would, listen, guys can do that on the side, but as long as it doesn't, interfere with their thing. I mean, that's why they will shut down abortion. And so I could have done this much quicker by saying, yes, you have a preference, I have a preference. Let's articulate those preferences of what society should be. How do you vision? And here is one of the elements that this guy, apparently he has this on his avatar. Put this picture up. This guy, one of his visions is not just subjugation of man and women. Here he is. We should go back to him because I think he does say that actually. But here it is. He's holding up a sign. Women should not vote. And he doesn't mean they should make the choice to not vote. He means they should not be voting.
Right, because what is also religiously decreed is that, in terms of Christian fundamentalism, is that a woman is under the auspices of her husband, and that women came from the rib of man, and they are thus inferior, and they're to be dominated. That's what this is about.
Watch where he goes with this.
religious doctrine
No,
on me,
because
and I don't want that.
you just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
What's my argument as to why I don't want
You have no
your
contention.
religion to? Well,
It feels good is better than God that I have somehow access to says so.
Well, I mean, I should have early on said, I concede. One is my preference, one is your preference. Let's just lay them out and see what the American public wants. Because it's quite possible we could be going back into the dark ages where women are the property of men. And understand, this isn't just bad for women. It's bad for men.
Of course it is. Of course, men are also victims of patriarchy. But like when he says it just makes you feel good, that's the rule that we abide by. Sam did not say that. Sam that said that he is guided by, I'm paraphrasing, but a humanist vision of reducing the suffering in the population for everybody where he can. That is not what he said. But when he brings up examples like pedophilia and compares it to homosexuality, when he also brings up incest and he makes the daughter, who I guess is having this incestual relationship with her father above the age of consent, and then he says, oh, the rule is it just makes you feel good. What are you saying? When you say that, oh, if we allow gay people to live their lives with, out being encumbered by the state, and then you liken it to two things that are objectively, I would say, immoral because they involve coercive power relationships, whether it be incest with the father having untold power over the daughter that I guess he's having an incestual relationship, even if she's an adult. Or when it comes to pedophilia, where the child cannot consent, that's what makes those actions morally reprehensible and wrong, and why we should structure our society to make sure that doesn't happen. That is very clear. But he's basically saying that all of these things are the same and making it like honestly telling on himself.
It's all
a little
sin,
bit.
is what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all. What'd you say?
It's all sin.
It's all sin, but also, something that a lot of conservatives are curious about.
because first of all, I don't think that you have the right to corner what God is telling us is right or wrong. And there are differences between religions. And so my argument is, like you're not going to keep halal or kosher, right? I mean, I don't believe that someone has a corner on religious truth. And the reason why we have a democracy is because we didn't want a king. And the kings came from the idea that their God said that they're the ones who's supposed to be king. And so we can disagree on this. I don't want to live in a country that is ruled by religious fundamentalism.
And if I do, you have no issue with that.
And no. And this is why I say under Trump, yes, you have won.
Yes.
You have a
Only
bunch
male
of
and
Christian.
female. You're right.
You have a Christian nationalist,
Yes, which is necessary.
And so I concede the point that under Trump, your Christian nationalism has gained an advantage under this.
Sorry, we're going to have more kids. We're going to have less abortions. We're going to have more family. We're going to have stable family households. Sorry about better education.
People, gay people should be outlawed.
They should be straight. They should be straight.
Women should be secondary to their husbands.
Women should submit to the husbands.
Women
that doesn't mean they are slaves.
Right,
it doesn't mean they are slaves. It means they are protected. Okay, let me ask you then. Let me ask you.
No.
Should women be drafted? Should women be drafted?
Listen, I think
if they're equal, should they be drafted?
I think
I'm
this
sorry,
is the
can you
vision
just pause it
that
1
you
second?
have.
See, this is where I should have gone. I should have gone to this at the beginning because this is the stuff that is really
But
relevant.
Sam, you said this to me when I had regrets about things I could have done differently in debates. You always are going to have regrets.
Oh, yes. No,
Okay.
I'm not-
It was a slam dunk. But the point is just like, shoot, I lost it. What was he saying there? Damn it. I had one.
Women in the military.
Oh, the draft. This is the incel thing. They always point this up. We haven't had a draft in this country since the Vietnam War. If the draft were to be brought back, I would fundamentally disagree with that and protest against it because I don't think that that anybody should be forced into conscription, especially with the way that the United States operates with empire and imperialism. So why do they use this example? The one thing that they can basically find in terms of where men were drafted, it's been over 50 years. Come up with a new example. Keep going.
And I think Trump supports it. I think the Christian nationalists he has throughout his government are all going to work towards your vision.
Yes.
And my hope is that when people look at this, they say, hey, wait a second, I don't want my life to be dictated by the notion of a Christian nationalist prescription. Now, you may win out. I mean, certainly, like if you look at a country like Iran, they have a theocracy there, and apparently that's, good for them if they want it.
My final point is
I don't want to live in a
My final point is
theocracy.
whenever we see people live out Christian values to its full extent, we see a great society. When we see people deviate from that, that's where all the problems arise.
All right.
I think you are at home in the Trump.
Thank you very much.
And so, from the perspective of Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, this guy won the debate. And on some level, that was to the extent that he won the debate, it was only because I didn't get to his prescription for what that meant quicker.
Yeah.
I don't think the American public broadly wants to have contraception that is outlawed, that wants abortion outlawed, that wants gay marriage outlawed, that wants trans people erased, that wants women subjugated, not slaves, as he said. They already tried that with the slaves. But I mean,
But second-class citizens who can't vote.
I mean, the question is, obviously, he doesn't want them to vote. Does he want to repeal all the laws that say that rape can actually happen between a wife and a husband? Because that's what we had in this country. You could not be charged with rape in the vast majority of the country just 50, 60 years ago, maybe less, if you raped your wife. It didn't exist.
And now they're
You
bringing
couldn't
back
have a
Andrew
credit
Tate.
card in your own name if you were a woman 60 years ago.
I mean, misogyny
50.
predates even our current economic system that goes back as long as almost like written history does. So that the idea that that's just gone away right now is absolutely absurd. And we're in a moment where Andrew Tate just got released with the pressure from the Trump administration, a major misogynist influencer.
Not a Christian, though.
Not a Christian, but I mean, he's all about subjugating women, so I'm sure they can get along
It's going to
well.
be tough to do the fundamentalism, is all I'm saying.
And was being embraced at that UFC fight by mainstream figures like Mario Lopez. I mean, this is the kind of thing where the arc of history is not linear. There are points of contraction, there are points of expansion, and we are at risk right now of deep contractions of civil rights for a variety of groups. It's already happening, obviously, with trans people, gay people. North Dakota is already introducing something. Some Republicans there about overturning Obergefell so that we could not have gay marriage. And he said it right there. He didn't even say that there shouldn't be gay marriage. He said gay people shouldn't even be gay.
Exist. There was another moment where one of
old
the
is that guy?
conservatives was basically saying I don't think people have a problem with gay marriage. Who here would have a problem with gay people kissing? And half the people raise their hands and they're like, oh.
I just want to say, I think there's a risk at labeling these people or understanding these people as representative of young people or even young conservatives in general. And I take Emma's point. I think misogyny is something that it will be rearing its head. This religious stuff, there's no gas in that. The religiosity is cratering. It's continued. Just last year, a separate study released in January found religious membership of young Americans was lower than the other demographics. 29% have no religious views. They're not going to be able to turn that around with media, in my opinion. Maybe that's quixotic, but this Christian version of nationalism, I hope they lean into that because
exactly. And that's why that is my point in saying where I could have spent whatever amount of time we had in having him just read off his vision for America, because I think it's completely out of step. And I think it's very easy for a lot of conservatives or people who vote for Trump to ignore the fact that the head of the OMB, Russell Vought, the head of the Secretary of Defense, the Vice President, the Chief of Staff are all Christian nationalists in this country.
Yeah.
And the list is probably longer.
Russ Vought is maybe the most powerful and most committed Christian nationalist in the government right now.
I'm not convinced that Vance isn't one
Fair
either.
enough. He's a late convert, which always makes you most insane. But to your point, Matt, I agree with you on the explicit religiosity. But like what we're seeing with the tech oligarchs and with Project 2025, it is quite easy to marry these two political movements into something that like flattens those things. So Andrew Tate's not a fundamentalist, but he can work quite nicely with religious fundamentalists in their efforts to subjugate women. And we already are in a post-Roe world. It's just it's a matter of time before they start to go after contraception, and specifically contraception that women can control. They're not going after condoms because men can put them on and know when they're on. They're going after birth control, IUDs, and the morning after pill, which are all things that are under the woman's purview and not visible physically. And that's my concern about all of this. But we'll see.
All right, we'll do another clip from that on another day. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.